My name is Janelle Blocker, and this speech is entitled A Skill That Can Save a Life. Picture this: you're walking through a park on a sunny afternoon. Suddenly, you see a man collapse on a bench nearby. People start gathering, some pull out their phones, some shout for help, but no one knows what to do. Those few minutes before the ambulance arrives feel like forever. Now imagine you step forward. You check for breathing, you start chest compressions, and you guide someone else to call 911. A few minutes later, the paramedics arrive, and that lady, she survives because you knew what to do. That's what first aid is. It's not just a medical skill, it's a life skill. Today, I want to convince you that learning basic first aid is something every single person should do, not just for emergencies, not just for other people, but for your family, your friends, and yourself. Because emergencies don't wait for professionals to show up. They happen in real life to real people every single day. My goal today is simple. By the end of this speech, I want you to feel inspired to take a first aid course or at least learn the basics online. Because one day, what you could do could make the difference in between life and death. Let's begin with the most obvious reason: first aid saves lives. According to the American Red Cross, more than 59% of deaths from injuries could have been prevented if someone had given first aid before emergency help showed up. Think about that. That's more than half. Heart attacks, choking, car accidents, allergic reactions, these emergencies don't come with any type of warnings. A person can lose consciousness or stop breathing in seconds. In fact, if someone stops breathing, brain damage can begin in just 4 minutes. The average emergency response time in the United States is 8 to 10 minutes. That means you are the first responder. If you know how to perform CPR, stop severe bleeding, or help someone who's choking, you can literally save a life before help arrives. Let me give you an example. In 2022, a 12-year-old girl named Samantha in a small Florida city saved her best friend's life during lunch by performing the Heimlich maneuver when her friend started choking. She learned that just a few weeks before. That is how fast and simple first aid can make a difference. Even when an emergency isn't deadly, first aid still plays a major role in reducing pain, preventing infection, and speeding recovery. Let's say you're camping with friends and one of them burns their hand on the campfire. Pouring cold water on the burn immediately, something you learned in first aid, can prevent blistering and even deeper tissue damage. Or imagine someone falls and twists their ankles. Knowing how to elevate and wrap the injury properly can prevent swelling and help doctors treat it faster later. According to the British Red Cross, up to 70% of injuries can be managed more effectively if people knew even basic first aid. That means fewer hospital visits, less long-term pain, and faster healing. The goal of first aid isn't to replace doctors, it's to stabilize someone until they can get professional help. In other words, first aid buys time. And in a crisis, time is everything. Now, let's talk about something people don't always consider: how first aid training affects you. Knowing first aid gives you confidence in an emergency. Most people panic because they don't know what to do. But when you have been trained, you can stay calm, think clearly, and take control. You become steady, a voice of reason in chaos. This confidence spreads. When people see someone act quickly and calmly, others follow. That's how strong, caring communities are built. They're people who are willing to help. Imagine if every school, every workplace, and every sports team had at least one person trained in first aid. Imagine how much safer we'd all feel knowing if something happened, someone nearby can take charge. In Norway and Germany, first aid training is actually required before getting a driver's license. They understood that emergencies are a part of life, and the more people prepare to act, then everyone is safer. Now, some people might say that what is 911 for? Or I wouldn't know what to do anyway. But here's the truth. Help can take time. In rural areas, emergency responses can take 15 minutes or more. Those minutes are critical. Others think that first aid training is too complicated or expensive, but it's not. You can take affordable local course through the Red Cross or even learn CPR basics online for free. The information is everywhere. You just have to care enough to learn. And don't worry about doing it wrong. Research shows that attempt at first aid is better than none. Most first aid is common sense, keeping someone calm, controlling bleeding, and keeping airways clear. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to act. Finally, learning first aid is an act of compassion. It says, I care enough to help. It reminds us that we share responsibility for one another, whether it's a stranger on the street or a friend at school or a loved one at home. Being ready to help one another is the most human thing we can do. When you know first aid, you don't just stand by and watch. You become the person others can count on. So let's bring it back to where I started. Emergencies can happen anytime, anywhere, to anyone. The question is, what do you do when a situation happens? Learning the basic first aid gives you the power to save lives, reduce suffering, and create safer communities. It builds confidence, compassion, and courage. And it doesn't take years of training. Just a few hours can change everything. So my challenge to you is, after this speech, take the first step. Look up a CPR class, ask your school or your workplace if they offer first aid training, or even watch a certified tutorial online. Because one day, someone might need you. And what you do in those first few minutes could be the difference between life and death. Be the person to step forward. Be the one who knows what to do. Because when you learn first aid, you don't just learn how to save a life, you learn how to make a difference. Thank you.